Hey Denchbags, what's going on? That's Landon Remixes here, and welcome to my review of the sophomore album from the worldwide phenomenon, DJ and producer from Sweden, Avicii. This one is called Stories, and it follows up to his 2011 debut album, True, which I actually was a huge fan of, from someone who's really into the experimental electronic side, into that really kind of weird alternative blend music. You wouldn't expect someone like me to be a huge fan of someone like Avicii, or for that matter, you probably wouldn't have expected me to like Zed either, but I do, and a lot of the times you can understand why these people are popular. People like David Guetta, I don't really understand why he kind of built up with the house scene. Calvin Harris, people like that are a little less so, but people like Zed and Avicii have definitely made their mark with using their unique talents and making just freaking catchy music. And that's something about Avicii, is that his melodies are some of the catchiest you will ever hear. His music is very heavily piano-based, uses a lot of harmonies and things like that to create this awesome, dancey, catchy music, and that's something that I've always loved about his music. With his debut album, he took a little bit of a turn into country music, and I think he's still developing that a little. He definitely used that with his last two singles, The Days and the Nights. And with this album, he goes a little bit more diverse, takes the step a little higher, puts 4 more tracks than he did on True, and it makes a pretty good listen if I do say so myself. We start off with the track Waiting for Love featuring Simon Aldridge. This one was actually produced by Martin Garrix, or co-produced for that matter by Martin Garrix. And when I had heard this premiered at Ultra, or at least on the live stream, back when Martin Garrix did his set, I was super hyped for this, more so hyped when the track actually did say Martin Garrix on it. That was a really cool collab, a little bit less so when it stopped crediting him. And I did think John Legend sang on the song, which he ended up not. It ended up being Simon Aldridge. Whatever, this track is definitely a good collab. Shows off Avicii's style very well, something that you take Avicii's classic sound, put it into this, and that's basically showcasing that. Put a little bit of Martin Garrix's production on it, and this track is what it's going to sound like. His new style, especially Martin Garrix for that matter, with songs like Forbidden Voices and Don't Look Down, you can hear his styles from those built into this, especially with the break leading up to the drop. Following that is the track Talk to Myself, which takes a little bit more of a tropical twist. Really love the vocals on this. Kind of sounds a little bit like Akon to me, but it's not, because Avicii doesn't really like to feature a lot of stars in his work like Disclosure did on their album. Really do like this track. Definitely an awesome twist on tropical house, and I think he does a very good job producing this type of genre that he's not really used to doing. Kygo's typically considered the king here of tropical house, but I think this one definitely is a close match to his production. There's a track Touch Me, which features some very soulful vocals, and although it's not a very exciting track, it does end up coming off pretty okay. And I didn't dislike it necessarily, but it's not necessarily anything new. I really do like when Avicii puts in these heavy, soulful vocalists, though, in his music. This is followed by 10 More Days, which he actually takes a step back from EDM in this, and kind of centers around a little bit more of a guitar. You hear these awesome backing vocals, and when I first heard this one, I knew it was going to be one of my favorites, easily one of my favorites on the record. That one's followed by For a Better Day, which was one of the previous singles from the album, and although it's not, it's definitely not bad, it's not one of my favorites because it definitely takes that same style. Like I said, Avicii's music is very heavily piano-based and uses these kind of off melodies to create this kind of signature sound, and this one's a bit too close to his signature sound for me to love, but it's still a good track regardless. Following that, there's Broken Arrows with the Zac Brown Band, and this is one that people are actually really hyped for. I think it might start to get played on the radio very soon, and I didn't really love this one. Zac Brown's vocals are very generic for himself. I think Avicii's pulled some pretty awesome vocalists on this record, including the ones on 10 More Days and Sunset Jesus, but on this one I've already heard way too much of Zac Brown. The production on this one is not that fantastic either, just something exactly what you'd expect a melodic house track to be from Avicii. Following that is True Believer, which actually features Chris Martin from Coldplay. This one I was much more excited for. The drop, I keep hearing this melody I've definitely heard before in a song, but I can't seem to find it in an Avicii song. It might be from someone else, I'm not really sure. Haven't been able to figure it out yet, But regardless, this is a really awesome track. Love the piano line on this. Following that is City Lights, which features kind of a Galantis type of vocal. This one is basically a standard EDM track other than that. Definitely not a fantastic track, but it's still a good track to get through. Kind of don't really like the extended nature of this. Definitely following that is one of the best tracks from the record, Pure Grinding. And this one definitely goes with its music video when it talks about just working for your money, and the music video kind of shows off this bank robbery in one scene and a man actually working to get his wage. And this definitely works with this, and he takes a bit more of a hip-hop approach. There's a Chance the Rapper type of vocalist that sings on this one, and it's just a really fun track to listen to. It's super interesting drop, and you'll definitely find yourself lost away with this one, and it's super catchy as well. Following that is one of my favorites from the record, is Sunset Jesus, which is actually just a remake of Avicii's Dear Boy, Avicii by Avicii remix from his last remix album that I thought about featuring in my top 10 last year. I really like that record, but it wasn't necessarily good enough. The Dear Boy remix was actually one of my favorites, and with this one he actually took that melody, took that drop, slowed it down a little, maybe changed the key too, don't quote me on that, but he adds a little bit more of a guitar on this, adds vocals, and the lyrics actually, I think, talk more about Avicii's background and how he moved from Sweden to California with his manager, and I think he's referring to Ash as Sunset Jesus. Not positive on that, but that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this track. At least that's how I'm interpreting it from the lyrics, and it's a very good track. I really like like I said, like the melody from the original, and he took that, reused it, and overlaid some nice silly child yeah sounds, and of course the vocals are definitely awesome on this as well. One of the most catchy on the record, and I really loved it. There's Can't Catch Me, which is actually one of my least favorites, although it is one of the more diverse tracks on the record, which people might praise it for being. Part of what kills this track for me is the vocals, partially from Wyclef, and I actually really like their last collaboration, Divine Sorrow. This one, not really as much. It takes a little bit more of that Haitian or maybe a little bit of reggae sounds, but overall I think the vocals clash a lot in this, and although it was trying to be one of the most diverse, it ended up just falling a little bit flat. There's the track Somewhere in Stockholm, which also came off as a slight disappointment, although I do really like the vocals on this one, and the lyrics at least. The production ends up falling kind of flat, and actually reminds me completely of My Only Friend by Project 46, which is on their last album, and acted really as nothing refreshing. Kind of takes on that Philip Phillips sound, kind of folk mixed with alternative sounds, and although it does add a little bit to the diversity, not one of my favorites either. We get the track Trouble, which definitely ties back into Avicii's country roots with his last true album, and I don't necessarily mean roots, but where he was going with the last record. And although this does kind of sound like a generic country song, he pulls it off very well, uses maybe a kind of violin as the lead synth during the drop, and it sounds very good. Although I'm not into country music, I've always praised Avicii for making it an enjoyable genre. Then we finish off with Gonna Love Ya, which also came off as a slight disappointment. The vocals actually kind of repeated for me, at least from Sunset Jesus. There's the same vocalist for one, and then the melody lines for them actually sound kind of similar. Uses that tropical house sound again, which we already heard in Talk to Myself earlier in the album. And that track came off as a slight disappointment. Didn't really love it, but it makes an okay closer. EDM praised it for being one of the best on the record. I didn't really agree with that, as you can tell. And overall, this album is a pretty good listen. Regular listeners will find themselves enjoying these very catchy melodies and just getting through this awesome Avicii record. Like I said, few tracks are really worth it on this one, but a lot of them tend to fall flat or basically average. I think the most fair rating I can give this is actually an 8.0. Now, I was actually planning on giving this a 9 or an 8.5 up to when I started talking during the review. Realized when I was talking that I'm actually kind of talking bad about it, which I don't necessarily mean to do. Like I said, it's a very good listen, and Avicii takes a lot of diversity on this one, piles it in. But overall, this isn't close to the most enjoyable record of the year. I don't think it should be praised as such. It's definitely a really good record. A few really awesome tracks on there. You've got Sunset Jesus, you've got Talk to Myself, you've got 10 More Days. All these tracks are very good, but then a few of them just fall flat or are pretty average EDM tracks, like City Lights. So anyway, what'd you guys think of the record? I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for giving this a good review, but let me know in the comments section down below. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.